Galatians 5 verse 18. But if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law.
Question. Pastor Wind, speaking of personality. I heard earlier that you used to respect Pastor Chiu. This respect may come from you studying there, as a student, as your pastor, gave you lots of help. All along, we've seen in our early church involvement, you only had a grateful respect for him. In the message, even when he came to Hong Kong, we noticed that Pastor Wind has a kind of character. The respect for this pastor is different from that of ordinary people. Believe in different people in the past. It also reported strange things happening in Pastor Chiu's teachings. However, Pastor Wind does not listen to other people's words or bad words, to evaluate this pastor or belittle him in front of others. Pastor Wind had just such an interesting personality. Until after the Whistler incident, Pastor Wind really has a decision to make: separate yourself from this church and this pastor. But the other day, I heard the pastor say, maybe a week or a month, you wonder if you've done something wrong. If you do wrong, you will kneel before this pastor. This kind of character or qualities, where does it come from?
This is from an element. I am the complete opposite of this, Pastor Chiu. Although the nature of things seems a little different, years ago, when I came back to establish the church, some people also reported that his message was strange and problematic. Because I already knew when I was there, he was so desperate for revival and acceptance, and he suffered many injuries. After being filled with the Holy Spirit, he left the participating church. He was eager to be in Glad Tidings Church. It can bring about a revival. The reason, as any pastor knows, especially those who are self-pity, he loved revival because it made him lick his wounds, and be able to prove him right, like he is Kwok Jing, can marry Wang Young, in short, the I am the main character kind. It follows that the pastors of all these churches prayed for revival. It's not loving your neighbor as yourself, it's self-love. So, the revival of self-love, it's always weird, you know? At the time, even though I didn't know how to describe it as self-love, but I saw it with my own eyes in Whistler, the ugliest display of self-love. The whole party was so weird. He encouraged his brothers and sisters to participate in such a gathering. For the church to grow? There were only about 500 or 600 people at the gathering. Caleb and Nehemiah's strategists were also present. By that time, I was leading a church of over 1,000 people. They call it the Great Revival. Among these 500 or 600 were also many churches in Whistler. Brothers and sisters were led by Gideon, and so on. These hundreds of people made the gathering a mess. The people on the stage sang to themselves. Men and women in the audience were hugging each other, while worshiping and praising. As I said, at that time, the event was held in Canada's Red District. The hymn leader on the platform was on his way to worship and praise. He is dancing with his shirt off and his underwear down. Then, I saw Pastor Chiu Chung Kun, to go up there and dance with him. Of course, he didn't take off his clothes. At that point, I thought, how could your self-love have come to this? For the sake of the brothers and sisters, you have not condemned these acts at all. As one of the organizers of the event, you're supposed to stop this. Persuade brothers and sisters not to participate. At the time, I was happy. Chiu Chung Kun also encouraged everyone to participate, so, I took Nehemiah and his wife, Caleb and his wife, a group of 6 people happily participated. The result was a shock. I can never let my parents, my loved brothers and sisters, continue to participate in such a church. For the pastor of this church does not love his neighbor as himself. He pretended to love others as himself. What he really loves inside is himself. a kind of self-love. The revival he craves, to prove himself, so, he sees these behaviors as informal. I didn't know then, like I do now, explain it to you and plainly, when I categorize it this way, at first glance, you already know it's wrong. But now, more than 2 decades later, I can say these words. I felt very wrong and uncomfortable, and felt that Christians could not see them, and say it's right. Never. Even less likely because of support, you walked onto the stage. And the guy next to you is dancing with his underwear down, and then call it worship and praise? How can you do that? How could you do that? Galatians 5 verse 18. But if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law.
Crimson colors fading in the night, looking every now and then, the pain is here to stay. I was to you a stranger, yet not a word was said. You sheltered me and clothed my back. On every little conversation begs another explanation. Am I lying to myself, to you? If you were here, what would you do? Don't look back, your story will be told. Who are you? Nobody will know. Only you can solve the riddle. Turn your back, 'cause that's what heroes do. Regardless of where you're from, where you're born, you do what's right, though you're all alone.